Welcome back, and thanks so much for staying with Sunrise. Now, it's the last day of September, and this whole month, we as a country are celebrating our heritage. The country is rich in cultural diversity, and this assortment in culture makes South Africa a very interesting destination to live in, to play in, to visit as well. Now, the Mpumalanga Traditional Art Market is an indigenous market dedicated to changing the lives of artisans in rural communities. We just had a chat with Sinate Cook, the co-director of Mpumalanga Traditional Art Market, to tell us more about what they're doing. But now joining us is Thebe Ikalafeng. He's the founder and chairman of Brand Africa, and Erik de Ridder, talking about the forum, the platform essentially that discusses the advancement of Africa and asking very critical questions as well. How do we increase productivity, competitiveness, and also how do we leverage on BRICS? To both of you, thanks so much for joining us. Thebe, let's start with you. These are discussions that have been taking place quite a number of years. There's various forums, different protocols, etc. How advanced, or what advancement have we made? Have we progressed any further?
I think we're making progress. I think also there's a bit of a difference where we are now. Where we are now, the difference is we are not getting private individuals like myself and many others around the continent who are proactively saying we need to take part in this, we need to contribute to this, we need to drive this agenda forward. Because in the past we've left everything to politicians. In the past we've left it to parastatal institutions. What we're now saying, we're saying as Africans, as South Africans, as Egyptians, we need to be driving this agenda forward ourselves.
Yeah. Erik, now you're South African Ambassador of One Young World, and we know at some point you need to hand over the baton as the old guard, and we often say that the youth are the leaders in the future, etc. Is there enough empowerment, if you look at a global scale, particularly in developing nations, of having intellectuals or growing or breeding that caliber of leadership that we need?
I think well, thank you for having us. I think in Africa what we've seen, and in the world over, I think we've seen in Tunisia and these places that even when those opportunities don't exist, I think when the circumstances are right, people will rise to the challenge. I think in South Africa there are a number of initiatives, both private and public, aimed at helping the youth along, but I think that the top-down methodology is not necessarily the kind of approach that we need to follow in the longer term. I think that agency at the individual level, so young South Africans taking control of their own lives, their own destiny, in the same way that that Brand Africa is taking the control of the project Brand Africa from the government, so to speak. I think that the young people are moving towards taking ownership of their own role in society and moving towards taking kind of a more proactive role, and I think that's absolutely crucial in the longer term. Yeah,
I think you probably as young people would have all the answers to change and save the world, etc. But it does depend on the political will to put impetus and to make these ideas into reality.
Well, you need both. So we cannot actually divorce our government from real life, because what governments do, they create an enabling environment. They create an enabling environment for us to be able to grow the economy, for us to be able to go to other economies, and we need everybody, and we need business as well. We need business because business create the businesses. They create the products and services which create the money which enables governments to collect taxes, and those taxes can be invested to create socio-economic benefits for Africans. For citizens. I think I want to add on to a little bit about your question and to Erik's answer as well. Yesterday, one of the panels that we had was on youth, and it was the most dynamic panel. We had 6 youth from Senegal, Uganda, South Africa, and they had everybody spellbound because these guys do have all the answers. You know, when we didn't have them last year on the forum, one young 21-year-old stood up and says, all of you are going to be dead in a few years. You should have us here telling you what the agenda should be.
Yeah. Well, what is it as a young leader, particularly thought leader, that frustrates you about the state of the world today?
I think the state of the world is at any given time a product of the people in there. I think the problem with having significant media presence and that kind of thing is we often feel divorced from the reality, and we don't necessarily see our own roles in it. And I think that what we're moving towards, especially with social media, is that creating that new awareness and a new ownership of these things. And I think that the state of the world today, I think, is very, very different from the one we'll see in a number of years' time. I think the young people of today, we think very differently, we have a different approach, we have a different perspective.
Yeah, but the social democracy has strengthened over the years, but there's a huge chunk of the population which is left out because of access to technology. Somebody was even saying that this need to be a basic right where everybody has access to it. How do we work around interconnectivity on the continent?
I mean, if you look at what Africa Media Initiative, who's one of the partners of Brand Africa, they've just signed up an agreement with Google, a worldwide $800 million agreement with Google. I think one of the agendas which they're driving is that about getting Africans connected. I mean, yesterday we were sitting in Johannesburg and we were the second trending topic, Brand Africa 2011, out of Johannesburg because of the power of technology. We were sitting here, everybody else was joining us because we're joining the friends who are connected. What we need to do, we need to get governments, all governments, to understand that part of moving this continent forward is about connecting Africans from all parts of the corner and giving them those spaces, because now today we do most of our learning on the digital platform.
Yeah, and with the forum of young people, I mean, is there a record, if you will, and timelines to say, look, these were the suggestions or recommendations made at the Brand Africa Forum previously, and follow up on it, or is it essentially a talk show?
I think what was evident yesterday, I think particularly in the youth panel, was that we are moving more towards an action-based agenda. I mean, a lot of the conversation was around kind of the practicalities of it. So, for instance, one of the specific areas of focus was education. One of the girls who was speaking yesterday was speaking about education in Senegal, where she's from, and about how practically can go about affecting change in those areas. And the same thing, we had Ralph from Brighter Young Minds speaking yesterday. It was the same kind of thing. It was about how do we move from speaking, especially in Africa, towards actually making a practical difference on the ground, which is the ultimate objective.
Yeah. All right, we'll continue our discussion just after the news. Quite a bit that we still need to go through, but thanks so much for your time. We're speaking to founder and chairperson of Brand Africa Thebe Ikalafeng, as well as Erik de Ridder, the South African Ambassador of One Young World, on the Brand Africa Forum on Economic and Development, or Economy and Development on the continent. This took place yesterday, and for more information, please go to their website. That's brandafrica.net/brandafricaforum. That's brandafrica.net/Brand Africa Forum. We're back after this.
We are now on the verge.
We're continuing our discussion around the Brand Africa Forum. The founder and chairman of Brand Africa Thebe Ikalafeng is in studio, and Erik de Ridder. De Ridder. He is the South African Ambassador of One Young World. Talk about the second annual Brand Africa Forum in Johannesburg. And the book I'm holding up here has the results of the survey conducted around the prevalence of South African brands, particularly in the rest of the continent.
Well, the prevalence of African brands in the continent, or the affinity that African consumers have with brands across the continent. What we wanted to do with the survey is to really try and see how Africans are creating, whether Africans are creators, innovators. And the survey shows that, 66% of the value of brands in the continent still lies on international brands, and 33% on African brands. And South Africa has found a way the leader with 24%, followed by Nigeria 9%, and Kenya 1%. And those are the dominant economies on the continent.
Yeah, and it's that consumerism that really constrains Africa's economic growth. Because if we were producing more than what we're consuming, we would be talking different numbers. Erik?
I think so. I think it's about really getting people online in producing things, in being more innovative, being more creative, and moving from, as you said, from consumption to production, and building our own platform and space in the world, as opposed to just importing.
Yeah. You say that we need to think local but act global, which is a huge stretch. We can never match the Chinese, at least not in our lifetime, in terms of the militants and the enormity of the production power that they have. And yet we form part of BRICS. How do we leverage and ensure that the African agenda is prominent on the list?
Yeah. The most important thing is that we have to have confidence in Africa. There was a long time when you say made in China, people think poor quality. When you say made in France, people say, oh, prestigious. When you say made in America, they say, my word, it's global. What we need to do, we need to grow this made in Africa perception that Africa can produce quality, that Africa can become that country where people come to. And the reason I'm proposing think local and act global rather than what we're taught in business schools, which is think global and act local, is because that's the only way that Africa is going to distinguish itself in the world. And that's the only way where African agenda is going to be seen as the main agenda. For a long time, when you talk about Africa, Africa was part of the agenda. And I'm saying that Africa should not be part of the agenda. Africa should be the agenda that all of us are excited about.
And as the saying goes, you can only be yourself because everyone else is taken. How do we solve the issues around socio-economic inequalities, poverty, etc.? As a young mind and thought leader, I'm sure you have all the answers, Erik.
I think between the millions of young people in this country, I think we do have the answers. I think that nothing really means anything unless we can, unless it's broad-based. I think unless we start contracting in the 2 million people my age who are unemployed in South Africa, until we bring everybody on board. And I think that's the mission of One Young World. It's the ambassadors have to go back into their communities, and spread the message of hope, spread the message of change. I think in South Africa, the National Democratic Revolution, all these different ideas, will never be realized or materialize unless we can actually spread this out. And as you said earlier, I think that we live different lives to many people in the country. And until everybody can have the same aspirations, and rationally so, I don't think we really are moving forward.
Yeah.
And I think, Cindy, if I should just add, the exciting thing we should love about youth is that today's youth are thinking out of the box. What we should be doing as governments, as countries, as nations, is we need to be supporting that, we need to be nurturing that excitement and fueling it with financial as well as other support to ensure that these people go out there and create, because they are at a stage where they can run the world, where they create ideas which are going to be the standards by which we live in the future. And to me, that's the most important thing. Why I believe that the youth are the future of the continent.
Indeed, greater participation. I mean, we already spoken about issues that would marginalize a larger group of young people, but to be part of such a forum, I think, is invaluable for growth, personal growth, and also accessing other thought leaders.
I think as you said, it's very exclusive. It's an incredible opportunity. But I think even if I wasn't involved here, I think that if you take, for instance, the National Planning Commission's Youth Jam, is a great opportunity for young people to really kind of exert themselves. We are the predominant chunk of people in this country. And I think that if we want to create the future we would like to see, then it's important that we make use of the opportunities that are there. People often say that government doesn't provide the space, business doesn't provide the space. But if we as young people don't rise to that and find those opportunities, then they're not necessarily going to come to us.
Yeah. And just in closing, the vision and mission of the Brand Africa Forum in articulating it for South Africans to carry as a badge or as a symbol of honor, what would you say?
Well, I think simply is to proactively drive those initiatives which grow the economy, which grow the reputation, and which grow the competitiveness of not just South Africa, of the continent. And as a South African, it's very important to play in the global agenda, to support the African agenda, because as the rest of the continent does well, South Africa does even better, because now there's a lesser reliance on South Africa to be able to be the breadbasket of the continent. What we want every nation to be distinctive and to be self-sustaining.
Yeah. The reawakening of the African giant. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much for your time. Much appreciated. We're speaking to the founder and chairman of Brand Africa, Thebe Ikalafeng, as well as Erik de Ridder, the South African ambassador of One Young World on Brand Africa Forum, the economic and development focus of the continent. For more information, go to brandafrica.net/Brand Africa Forum, and or you can just simply go to our website at etv.co.za. We're back after this.
Mama ever tell you about those silly little things? those things that you always do. I mean those silly little things, yeah. I like going around wanting people to love you. Well, sometimes they won't even try. I stop going around wanting people to love you. I got only one advice for you. You better love yourself. Kaya kinto sa bantu. Kaya kinto sa bantu. Kaya kinto sa bantu. Kaya kinto sa bantu. Kinto sa bantu. Kaya kinto sa bantu. Kaya kinto sa bantu. Sugana nento sa bantu. Kaya kinto sa bantu. To sa bantu. Tamnete. Tam pam 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 da 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 da.